Just a second. All right. So before we begin, I request the audience to put themselves on mute and switch off their cameras. Please note that the session is being recorded and we are also going live on our Facebook page now. So I request the Zoom management team to proceed for going live. And I wish everyone present here a very good morning. So when it comes to the possibilities and possible perils of artificial intelligence and learning and reasoning by machines without the intervention of humans, there are a lot of opinions out there. Only time will tell us which one of these are the closest to our future reality. But until we get there, it is interesting to contemplate what that might be and what the legal fraternity can actually expect. So with this idea in mind, I, Vedpriya Lahiri, Assistant Professor, TME Law School and the convener of this conference, will extend a very warm welcome to you all to the inaugural ceremony of National Conference on Artificial Intelligence and Law, a closed interface. This is being organized by the Law School of Delhi Metropolitan Education, Noida. Today, we have with us as chief guest Professor Dr. V.C. Vivekananda, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Hidayatullah National Law University, Raipur. We welcome you, sir, and we thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule and gracing the occasion here. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to Honorable Chairman, Mr. Aman Sani, sir, who will be joining us shortly, and to Director General, Sir, Honorable Mr. Justice Bhavan Singh, sir, Director General, Delhi Metropolitan Education, and former Judge, Allahabad High Court, to this event. Thank you, sir, for your presence and for your blessings for this event. I also welcome Director DME, Professor Dr. Ravikant Swami, and Head Academics, Professor Dr. Bhavesh Gupta, to this inaugural ceremony. I welcome all the participants, esteemed audience, and I'm very sure that the next 2 days of deliberations and discussions would be very enriching and insightful for us all and help us gain valuable knowledge of this theme. So, with this, to begin with the ceremony, we all know that light symbolizes knowledge and prosperity. It not only dispels darkness, but it illuminates our souls. To make this day a blessed one, let's invoke Goddess Saraswati's blessings by virtually lighting the lamp of knowledge and wisdom. For this, I request the Zoom management team to kindly share their screen. Please welcome. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, no institution can run without the presence of a great leader, and we are privileged to have with us our Director General, Honorable Mr. Justice Bhavan Singh, sir. So thank you so much, sir, for your constant support. To acquaint our audience with his lordship, Honorable Mr. Justice Bhavan Singh was appointed in UP Judicial Service in April of 1970 and promoted to higher judicial services in 1979. His Lordship presided over the Special Court of CBI, Dehradun from 1983 to 87. Sir was elevated to the Registrar of Allahabad High Court in 1992 and served as that for about 3 years. Sir graced the office of Registrar General, Supreme Court of India from 1998 to 1999 and was elevated as a permanent judge of the Allahabad High Court on March 26, 1999 until he laid his office in 2007. His lordship was then appointed as the president of UP State Consumer Commission. Thereafter, Sir adorned the august office of the chairman of Judicial Training and Research Institute, UP, from 2012 to 2014 and joined Delhi Metropolitan Education as Professor and Director General in 2014. Sir, we are very honored to have you with us, and I request His Lordship to address the gathering and give us his blessings. Please, sir.
Thank you, Vedpriya ma'am. The chief guest, Mr. Vivekanandan, Vice Chancellor, Hidayatullah National Law University, Raipur. Mr. Aman Sahani, Vice President of Sunshine Educational and Development Society, which governs the Delhi Metropolitan College, Education College. The Director, DME, Mr. Ravikant Swami. Dr. Bhavesh, Head of Academics. All faculty members, the coordinators, in particular, Vedpriya ma'am and Shri Durga ma'am. Our special guest, Mrs. Nagpal, Dean of Subharti Law University. All the participants, PhD scholars from across the country, and dear students of DME School of Law. On behalf of Delhi Metropolitan Education, I welcome the Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Vivekanandan, and all other participants who are joining this conference to deliberate over a non-law subject which is unique in its application to law and justice. I'm sure that the 2 days deliberations with pros and cons of artificial intelligence, wonderful results are going to emerge out. As a matter of fact, artificial intelligence has today become a verb. So as to say, we can AI that. Friends, Bill Gates once said that less happens in 2 years than we expect when it comes to technology, but more is going to happen in next 10 years. His observation fully applies to artificial intelligence, and I'm of the view that the impact of artificial intelligence on our personal lives and on our social, political, and economic institutions will become persuasive and transformational. The law and courts will not be exempt. Richard Ruskin, a British lawyer, conducted an interview process in the last phase of the last century and extracted the knowledge and reasoning process from the heads of legal experts, and then he codified the collected material and computerized all such collections. This was a rule-based expert system. When people asked questions to this computerized system, they were able to provide legal answers which were of higher standard than the human experts. Friends, I vividly remember that in 1997, a news broke in that Garry Kasparov, the world chess champion, had been beaten by IBM's Deep Blue, a computer system. IBM again made a news in 2011 on a live broadcast of an American TV quiz show called Jeopardy. Their system known as Watson beat the two best over ever human contestants. That system could answer any question on any subject, on any topic, more accurately and rapidly than any human being. AlphaGo, a high-performing machine learning system designed by Google DeepMind to play game Go, which has more possible moves than there are atoms in universe. In 2016, AlphaGo beat the world's top player Lee Sedol by 4 games to 1. Friends, all of you know that robots with AI have brought a revolution in the computerized system. These robots have been developed by many countries. Saudi Arabia has given even citizenship rights to a humanoid female robot named Sophia. Implications apart, Sophia can do many tasks. It can obey your commands. It can bring a cup of tea to you. It can mimic 62 facial expressions, including laughing and crying. Sam is a political robot developed by New Zealand who will contest elections, and if he becomes a parliamentarian, he will be entitled to formulate laws for the human beings. Wonder. Friends, inspired by early successes in game playing, machine learning has recently captured the imagination of legal professionals. Richard Ruskin says in his book titled Online Courts and Future of Justice that these systems can identify patterns, regularities, and correlations that human lawyers cannot when performing conventional methods. In the world of litigation, when there are large number of documents to review, technology-assisted system can outplay junior lawyers and paralegals. Using a form of supervised learning, these systems can even predict which documents the expert lawyers would select as the most relevant. From large data rooms, these systems are able to isolate the contracts which appear to give rise to the most worrying risks and liabilities. Artificial intelligence has great impact on judges and lawyers while working online. It is thus clear that our systems and machines are becoming increasingly capable of. Secondly, they are taking on more and more tasks in legal profession that were once in the domain of legal experts, that is, lawyers, judges, and juries. Thirdly, new tasks, new tasks are likely to arise in the years to come, and machines are likely in time to take on many of these tasks. The best advantage I can visualize may be that litigants, by taking recourse to artificial intelligence, can learn well in advance whether they would succeed in their cases if filed before the court, or they are likely to lose their claim. That will be the greatest advantage of artificial intelligence in the field of law and justice. In this way, many litigants would escape expensive litigation of courts. Let us discuss and debate in this conference whether machines and computers can replace judges. Associated with this would arise many other questions, such as will it be morally acceptable, or whether it would be jurisprudentially coherent to develop such systems. Let me exhort the experts and participants, scholars of this conference to delve upon these issues. Thanking you all for being with us this morning.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your inspirational words. It's always a pleasure and an honor to listen to you. Now, with this, I invite Gaurav Vardhan, the student convener of DME National Conference, to continue with the ceremony. Over to you, Gaurav.
Thank you, ma'am. We have with us Director DME, Professor Dr. Ravikant Swami with us here. I invite him to set the theme of the conference. Please, sir.
Okay. I remember the day when we first sat and were discussing about the theme of this conference. And we have a typical phenomena that the faculty sits together, the HOD drives them, and we ask faculty members for the themes of the forthcoming conference. And yes, as expected, the themes which were listed, nowhere there was AI, obviously, because the themes were very traditional. Someone was talking about evolution of CRPC, changes in CRPC, IPC. At best, it was IPR. But then DME Law School, which is obviously a young law school, started in 2012, has developed a USP over time, and that USP is considering out of the box innovative topics for the conferences. And then came up this topic, artificial intelligence and law. And yes, there were fears out there. People were telling me that people were telling the conference conveners that, oh, it's going to be a difficult time. Who's going to connect AI and law? Because AI itself is an abstract field and law is something which is prevalent everywhere. So connecting these two areas was indeed something which seemed to be very difficult. But then as we moved on, as things got in place, it's a very around 80 articles are there on this subject. While going through the articles, I was really surprised to see what kind of connect people have tried to establish. And when people are going to read the book, which is the output of articles of this conference, the normal conclusion will be that this conference is a conference of the future. Yes, it's a conference of the future. Whatever we are going to understand today and tomorrow is going to be implemented somewhere after 10 years, 15 years. I wish all the participants a very happy learning with this new abstract and dangerous topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We are very honored to have with us the visionary scholar of law, Professor Dr. V.C. Vivekanandan, sir, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Hidayatullah National Law University, Raipur. As the chief guest to the ceremony, I invite Ms. Betpriya Lahiri ma'am to introduce the honorable guest.
Thank you, Gaurav. To give a background to our audience, Professor V.C. Vivekanandan has been a legal educationist for over 3 decades. He has earlier served as the founder dean for School of Law, Bennett University, and as the dean of Rajiv Gandhi School of IP Law at IIT Kharagpur. He also served as the MHRD IP chair professor at Nalsa University, Hyderabad since 2008 and was a professor at NLSIU Bangalore in 2009. Professor Vivekanandan was involved in the policy negotiations at WIPO, Geneva, as Government of India representative between 2013 to 2015. He was also the founding director of Legal Information and was an elected member of the Asia Pacific region at the ALAC of the Internet Corporation of Assigned Names and Numbers between 2008 to 2010. And as the nominating committee member of ICANN from 2010 to 2011. He has been an adjunct visiting professor with Business School of Buffalo University, New York since 2007 for their executive MBA programs on business laws. Sir has been a research scholar at Maastricht University, Netherlands, and an Institute of Intellectual Property in Tokyo in the past. He was bestowed with the Innovation in Legal Teaching by Society of Indian Law Firms at Milat in 2017. He serves as the jury of CII Innovation Awards Committee. We are very honored to have you with us, sir, and I would now request you to deliver your keynote address. Please, sir.
Thank you. I hope I am audible.
Yes.
Okay. So, Honorable Justice Dhanmar Singh, presiding over this conference, Sri Ravikant Sharma Swami, who was a moving force of accepting this challenging topic to be the conference, and also is able to, bring in a large amount of audience to participate in this. And my own alumni, Bedapriya Lahiri, I only first came through the mail. So as I said, whether current students of HNLU or past students of HNLU, the Vice Chancellor is quite weak. Normally, they have to listen to HNLU people, right? Vedapriya is laughing. She knows a little bit of story. So the point, what I went to say, so I accepted this. Very interesting. Why I accepted is bit of confidence, because way back in around 2013, 2012, I first introduced a seminar course of artificial intelligence and law in Nalsar University. It was an experimental seminar. Seminar is a small group of people who will join, and then probably seminar is not something which we come and tell everything. It develops over in the classroom, what happens. So it was a very interesting thing. I did at that time with very little knowledge about the technical side of that. But always as a lawyer, either knows or pretends to know everything. I said that we should float this course. And of course, I had a technical support from University of Hyderabad. There was a gentleman who was doing research, who worked in US, especially on some projects with the military government. And then it was artificial intelligence. And then he came. So I was very curious, where I met him in, I'm a Freemason, so I met him there, and he explained to me, it was very intriguing for me, the kind of research which military was doing on artificial intelligence and law. So I was asking him very curiously to begin, before I technically start, for you to understand how complex the whole thing is happening. I asked him, what are the project you are doing? He was telling a project. He is basically a technical guy from computer science. And he said, he and a psychiatrist and few people are doing a project for the army. I said, what? What is the project? He said, the project is about, in human interaction, who can tell a lie without, winking an eye, or make you believe if they lie. I thought it's a very curious project, right? What is this project and what it has connection with, such high profile thing? He said, I will explain to you. Then I was curious, did your project completed? Who will lie? Very convincingly, I asked him. So I had some people in my mind, So I asked him, but when he told, I couldn't believe. He said, the person who can lie very well, he said, is a mother. To me, it was, I said, what nonsense, I said, because we are either really or politically correct mothers, or goddess. So I said, mother, I said. The second one, he said, army person, he said. That was again what you call as blasphemous when I tell these two names. So I was telling, what is this research and why this research? What are you doing? What is that? Then he said, no, this is a research about a high casualty people were having in the Gulf War. When they're trying to do, control the area and they move around, often they get blasted. And often, some of the time, what happens is, whom they believe, whom they don't believe is a question what they said. Then I said, mother, he said, they believe a lot of women who are, women or homemakers, in that part of Gulf, not many women work, and they are all there. They tend to convincingly tell them to go to one place, and that is the place which will be booby trapped, right? And they're so convincing they talk. Then he said the other one is army. In what sense? I said. He said these two people, different context. He explained to me of the artificial intelligence study where they were doing. A mother is a person who can take all shocks and make you tell life is good, right? For children, everything, your mother can make a child to eat very easily by kind of promises and things like that, which is absolutely not true. He said that they have a very huge convincing power about trying to tell something, he said. And then he told me another one is army people never trust, and they are always on the edge because they know any time they are, can happen. And so they were looking at it. So even he said, these are the two areas. He had a complex, project which was running. So that really triggered me. I told him to come to Nalsar University to join me as a partner because I was not in practically in many projects of this nature. I was only philosophically addressing artificial intelligence. The wonderful thing, we repeated that once more. And then I had other priorities. I was not floating. And then I never had the opportunity to float. But much later, I find a lot of young researchers, including one researcher at Bennett University, was very much in advanced stage of connecting law. So then my curiosity little developed. But at the same time, I thought I don't want to get too much technical. Then I forget law. So I thought I will look at the interface of artificial intelligence and law in one sense. But that was a journey which allowed me to an extent what a lawyer should know about technicalities. Probably technical people know a little bit about law. It is in this context, with that familiarity and that little bit of confidence, I accepted when Bedapriya said to speak about this as chief guest. So what I am planning now is to very quickly go through some slides what we have. Some of you who are a little advanced working on this, definitely you may be knowing what I'm talking. So take it as a revision. There could be quite a few people, I would say that they know something, but not so clear, what you call as, there is one. And there is another lot who are blessed lot who are not initiated at all in this area of artificial intelligence and law. They are the best listeners actually, because they can start on a fresh slate about what is what. So always audience has a different type of what I call as typologies in our audience. I may not be able to check, but I thought I will try to figure it out in such way. I try to tell about this whole thing, which starts from the technology side. How does it move to the legal side? So let me try to put across to you. Whatever I'm telling is from natural intelligence, not exactly artificial intelligence. So this could trigger you, because all seminar workshops is not about giving you a theory and conclusion. It's all about questioning and thinking what it is, so that it is a law. It is a what I call, it is always a journey of what we do in research, in one sense, where we keep adding certain benchmarks when we do research. So let me share my screen. I presume my screen is allowed. Okay, thank you. So I hope my screen is visible.
Yes,
Yes,
it is.
sir. Yes.
Okay. I titled as intellectual property, but I'm going to deal with technical parts also as part of AI, because I was more on the IP side. So if I begin my initial proposition, definition, without definitions, human beings cannot be there. But somebody said the most dangerous thing we do is keep defining things, which we know many times, is not correct. But nevertheless, we are such habituated animals that we need some definition. I was going through, I thought a kind of a vague definition some author gave, a study of how to make computer to do things at the moment which people are better. Very interesting it is. Or whether they can do better than us. That is the crux. Because computers, technology, machines are not new to us. Machines are there, part of our human history. In different parts, different machines came. But all along, machines are considered as dumb. Dumb means it is as dumb as the creator. The creator tells something, the machine does. If the creator is intelligent, machine is intelligent as the creator, what he wanted it to do. If the creator is a little dumb, the machine will be dumb. So that is how the relationship. So he tried to put it in a different way. How do we make something which will do better than us? This is the biggest question mark, which in the evolutionary thing of life forms, we consider we are on the top. We are on the top of the hierarchy. we are also dangerous. Somebody said the most dangerous animals are human beings compared to any other species in the world, right? Because, we know how to destruct and then have a conference how to resurrect, all that stuff. But when we say that, we decided two things. One is life forms, another one is non-life forms. So non-life forms is very, very clear to us. It is just we wanted some non-life forms to help our life comfortable, do certain things, speed, work, whatever. But clear distinction about life forms. So life forms are considered intelligent in their own, ecosystem. A bird is as intelligent in constructing things like a civil engineer, or what you call as fish is as intelligent to camouflage itself sometimes to have its prey. So it looks like, again, a debatable thing. Is it we are responsible, or there is a higher thing which is responsible, which will be again an endless debate which is happening. But for time being, we talk about a distinction between we as creations of nature or God, on the other side machines. Now if I look at it, if I go a little further, for those uninitiated, recent times, what they call KBS, knowledge based system, it provides problem solving capability which is performed by an inferential engine. It's also able to justify its behavior by expressing the inferential steps that have led to certain conclusion. This they used to call as knowledge-based system. Then they talked about expert systems. It has an intelligent behavior and is capable of performing tasks for which a specific or competence of expertise is usually required. Still, what you call as, these are all still under control. The third part, what we see is a neural network. A neural network implements opposite of the intellectual model of knowledge-based system. It is constructed with units called neurons, whose behavior is defined by a mathematical statistical function. They learn the right answer by the patterns and can reason out than being programmed. This is where I would not even call evolution. It is where a creator becoming an object, I call it. We are subjects and there are objects. And suddenly our object becomes the subject. And the big question mark, will the subject become the object in such situation? I hope you understand jurisprudentially what I'm trying to tell, because that is where finally judges and lawyers are going to play around, right? It is here the domain where they will look around, not the technologist. Do you get my point? I often say this in many places, that the fundamental question for science is why. A scientist's fundamental one word in the mind is why. For the technologist, it is how. For the lawyer, for whom. Lawyer will look for whom. He wouldn't look why, how, let them solve. For whom I will decide, or we will work out systems. So it is in this context we are talking artificial intelligence from science and technology. And when I'm talking artificial intelligence, we as lawyers discussing is how far and how good. How far it can go, how good it will be, and what is that. This is where from science to law I call comes. So there is no law without science. But science cannot be a runaway science. We really talk about law, right? This is the big battleground where I call law is not a linear thinking. We used to use the word fuzzy logic, many things. It's very creative thinking at many times. Whereas no way I'm telling linear thinking is bad, because linear thinking is very crucial in science and technology to keep things going. So we had knowledge system which is opposite. It's turned upside down by neural networks, which talks about learning things and making its own decisions. So your Google search makes its own decisions. It is observing you, what you're doing. No more it is guided. It takes its own sense. So what is that? If you really look at it, what is happening? Alexa, right? If you have Alexa and using Alexa, Alexa comes to your house or your wherever as a programmed machine. But over a period, Alexa understands you. If Alexas all put a conference and talk to each other, they will be talking about their different, owners and masters, right? My master is like that. No, no, my master is like that. But all Alexas come from a factory in a particular way. And then you're really moving into artificial intelligence. If some of you wanted to know it in a very casual, technical way, rather than getting bogged down with computer science. Now, not only Alexa as a home product, you got this Google car, self-driving car, which is still being experimented, right? Self-driving car, and somebody put up a joke. The problem is, in self-driving car, the policeman cannot come and give you a ticket for drunken driving at all, right? Do you get my point? So I saw this WhatsApp joke, the cop stopping your car, and then he says, "Stop it! I smell alcohol." Then it's only passengers. They're laughing and check, the steering wheel, because it drives on its own. So probably they think, for those who are into late night, characters, suddenly they're all waiting for self-driving car to come because otherwise it's a problem. So very interesting propositions. Now, you have this vacuum cleaner. That very interesting. Indians and technology are not that friendly in general, I would say. I know for last 25 years, every Indian home has a vacuum cleaner which is kept above in the attic, and the maid will come and clean. And they even tell maid cleans better than the vacuum cleaner. I don't know if this is vacuum cleaner's fault or our attitude towards vacuum cleaner. I really don't know. I've seen all middle class houses having a vacuum cleaner. Even my house has one, almost unopened, right? But today this vacuum cleaner is smarter. It is not a vacuum cleaner. You take it somewhere. It says this is where dust gathers. This is where dust is less. So if you're going to time it, it is going to not do that understanding, because the vacuum cleaner doesn't know which home it's going. But after going to the home, vacuum cleaner gets its character. This is how we need to understand when we talk about the beautiful world of science and technology. We'll come later to that. So now traffic systems. These are all again in many other Western countries. You can see the camera is not the dumb camera which captures. It is even telling at a particular time many motions are captured. Speed is captured, many things, a lot of data is done, and it does give certain predictive thing about what is happening. So this is now in the hands of a traffic police. So we find in business management, I'll just rush through few want of time. Spam filters, all these are all existing now. Artificial intelligence is on the roll now as we speak. In email, voice text, personal assistants like Siri, what you're having, Google now you're having, automated responders, process automation, sales, security surveillance, in business part. In e-commerce, smart searches, Amazon. How could Amazon do such a big business? It's not just the infrastructure what they have. They have that artificial intelligence inside to know what you really want, and how you are really searching, what I can suggest to you, which you might be tempted to buy, right? So in a sense, it is almost tracking your inner psyche. Very interesting. We talk privacy, we are talking physical privacy. Your mind privacy is already part of artificial intelligence to know what is happening. Fraud detection for prevention of online, dynamic price optimization. Naturally, these are all templates which is given by companies using. Naturally, it will be a good side. There will be a bad side to that. This is where lawyers and judges will be more worried. All this technology for good side. On the other side, the same technologies, how does it, being used? Because one level, technology per se is not good or bad. We say a knife is not good or bad. Who handles the knife for what is always the primordial question about that. Now add one more problem. Earlier, who handled? If the technology itself becomes a mind of its own which wants to commit destruction, then what do you do about it is a big question, which you must have seen in Isaac Asimov's novels or in movies, all that robo movies or science fiction movies. So that is very nice. We clap and come back from theater because we like fantasy. But at the same time, if fantasy is reality, then are we prepared? What is that? How we are prepared jurisprudentially? How to do is a big question. So if I put it, as I said, marketing, I'm just skipping for want of a thing. You must be definitely having all this happening. But I want to tell where I move to law. This is a quote which I'm never bored for many years. The quote says, the quote is simple. We are approaching 21st century technologies, 20th century governing process, and 19th century governance structures. What is it? Alexa is 21st. Your IT Act is, your mindset how to deal is 20th century. You are never, you as a personality, you're never in future. You are no, and if your personality keeps changing every year, you are a very difficult person to be understood by others, right? People assess, nah. Students assess with 2-3 classes who the teacher is, right? Then only they can move with the teacher. Lawyers assess with 2-3 times meeting a judge in the court how this judge is. So always we are talking about some stability factor, and which means we don't change, technology changes. When we don't change, what governs us is laws. I am telling you, IPC, all the lawyers know year which year. Evidence Act, all of you know which year. Okay, Telecommunications Act, you know which year. And if I ask you in your family tree who was living in that year, you will not know 100%. Right? So you are really talking about technology, what I call as mindset and legal structures in different levels. All that you are putting together into one logic. And that logic is going to be, take it from me, chaotic. It is going to be a chaotic logic. So let us be prepared for the outcome first. If you are prepared for the outcome first, you don't get defeated. You try to at least manage chaos. That's all I will tell. What is technology and science? We have managed chaos all along. Because there is a great benefit of technology and science that we cannot deny. You and I are talking today. I am sitting somewhere. You are all sitting in somewhere. And then still we are connected thanks to science and technology. Right? Yesterday, they were asking Sri Ravi Shankar, one interaction we had with him as Vice Chancellor. Somebody asked about this terrible thing of pandemic, curse of God. He said, see, look, why are you thinking terrible? Pandemic came this year, thanks to Zoom, everything we are managing. 10 years back, pandemic, he says, nothing could have been done. So at least look at the silver lining. Science and technology has come, we could mitigate this pandemic, which happened so long. So very interesting, positive answer, I thought. So why I'm bringing the balance between science, technology, as well as law. If I look at the next slide, as I said, from Flintstones, we call it, to genetic clones. Human history, in a way, is history of technology. Yet the relationship between law and technology is a constant, always. What is the constant? Always law tries to audit technology. Law, when I mean the whole fraternity. So maybe who knows? We don't know. When Flintstones was there, licensing would have come. Right? They would have asked all Flintstones to be surrendered and take a license because somebody would have messed up with Flintstones of setting fire to somebody's house. That's my guess. I did not see that in the Flintstones cartoon anywhere, but this is possible. So what I'm trying to tell, this is where we are trying to do. So in this line, the buzzword is artificial intelligence. It has multiple definitions. As I said, machine learning, Honorable Justice talked about, the chess machines, etc., which they call deep learning, all that. So the functional competency is about replacing humans in various facets. This is where we slowly move in from public policy. Will we lead to loss of jobs? Is it clerks in banks? Or Justice, casually introduced and said, will it replace junior lawyers? Right? Am I right? Senior
Yes.
lawyers can buy artificial intelligence, keep with them. Junior lawyers do not even have purchase capacity of artificial intelligence. So what happens to young lawyers, right? These are the things what is happening. The constant is nothing, let me tell you. Teaching dogs to sniff and to drones in the sky, we did it so far. But as I said, I acquired in this pandemic period a stray dog in HNL leave and took him home called Prince. Now, that fellow is teaching me 1 or 2 things, right? I taught him for 5-6 months. Now he is teaching me a few things. That's okay. But still what he teaches is not very alarming to me. But if it becomes alarming, then that is the problem, the hype, what we are talking. So it is about creative and destructive ability. creative ability of AI, health, education, communications, travel, consumerism, fantastic. The destructive ability is weapons, selective annihilation, displacement of the common man from a common job. This is what the whole two sides. So, not per se we are talking artificial intelligence is good or bad. The question is how we are going to deploy a runaway thing like that, or is it at a point you should even not have it? I call it as, ethical things in science, research, cloning, many things we have questions about that. So the creative ability is about the precise decision making from mountains of data. That's fantastic. That is so much lovely that lawyers and judges could more precisely handle legal systems. But destructive ability is about the precise striking of any target. And so, what do we do? How do we bring a public policy? That is the big question. Not even you cannot stop technology's march. Throughout human history, nobody could stop technology march, right? So, if I look at it as this is what I said, central question for science is why, technology is how, law for whom. The boon and bane of AI is the central debate. Boon is for governance goals, business stability, spread of health, universality of education, swifter justice delivery system. Bane is labor displacement, arms and aggression, surveillance and targeting. As I said, it's a constant use and abuse of technology in human, evolution. If I put it the next thing, as I said, if I look where we are today, if I tell about public policy, this is one of the crux which I want to use, and as part of my last part of my lecture is the last decades of frontline countries, US, UK, France, China, almost a decade back, started taking the narrative of AI from a national point. Universality, you leave it. National interest, how they will get an edge. Because at the end of the day, even though we say Vasudhaiva Kudambaha, we are nation states, right? Whatever lofty ideal you are checked in the passport office or a visa office. They don't allow you unless which nation state, what you are allowed. So in that context, science technology moves. Whereas India considered as a soft line, frontline power, because it's so population technology. In the beginning, when I used to travel, nobody asked me questions. In the late 2000, when I started traveling abroad, every visa thing in US or UK or somewhere, they'll ask, oh, which technology company you work for? Because they think every Indian who is coming is a technologist. That's the kind of power what we have outside also. But interestingly, we were a little late, I would call it. But at the same time, being late has its own advantages in many ways of putting things together. And Niti Aayog, the think tank, has come out with a slogan called AA for all. They have published a huge report. Naturally, I need to caution as a teacher and lawyer, I always tell there is a government template always for establishment. If you ask me what is the vice chancellor's template, I will read fantastic things in a convocation, right? That's my template. Students will have a different template altogether and tell these are the problems. So we need to somewhere travel between the official and the not so well exposed official, that we have to tell. Probably the A for all comes from our old Benthamite concept, greatest good for the greatest number, because ideal good for the ideal number is not the question. And that is how I consider. So when I went through the whole data, I did find a lot of good sense prevailed compared to some of the Western counterparts philosophy, where it is used for more muscle of power. At least our document talked about how it can be good for a vast population like us. Of course, the fallout is common universally anywhere with this type of technology. Now, healthcare, agriculture, smart cities, smart mobility, and transportation, these are the buzzwords, the 5 targets mentioned in the Niti Aayog paper. Now, the policy paper of 2018 to 2020 was deliberated, but before we could move to action plan, all of us know pandemic stopped us in many ways. Even though we are discussing, talking in online, still near normalcy has not developed. We are slowly inching. Hopefully, there is no second wave. So the caution side is that science fiction of machines managing the universe is audited. If I tell what is this exactly does what human beings are. Examples Justice gave, 2, 3 examples about large machines or the smart chess players being beaten. But it is now going beyond mathematical algorithm. Why I said is, probably we thought technology, mathematic people do machines. We thought artists are different. We say, don't do art. We thought is mystery. Science and law thing we thought just to break your head, you will get it. But arts, how did a poem come? How did a painting came? We say it's divine. It's God's gift. This is our beautiful way of looking at the world of arts. So the world of science is what Einstein will tell: 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. If you go to the art, it is the other way around. It is 99% inspiration, let me tell you. Only 1% is perspiration. You get my point? They asked Michelangelo, how do you make such great statues? Right? Because they could not fathom. He casually replied, statues are already in the stone. I remove the unwanted parts, he said. The statue comes out, he said. For us, it's a simple reply. You and I don't know which unwanted part to remove in a stone. That is the big problem in life, right? So when I look at these, let me tell a few examples. What distinguishes, as I said, that this is one of the important center in Bangalore, does a lot of work. I want students to go read in their website, Center for Internet Society. They have done a lot of work in the last 2 months and given certain propositions for public policy. One of the thing by Illinois Hickok, he says, how do you think AA should behave in India? Would this be different in another context? What societal norms are specific to India you think AA should reflect? Should AA be allowed to take autonomous decisions? Are there situations we should never allow AA to take autonomous decision, even if they are capable of? That is one big question. This is like barring. Should there always be a kill switch? Should always humans being in the loop? Should AA be given a personhood? Already Justice mentioned about Sophia. Right? Interestingly, Sophia is given citizenship in a place which you never imagined, connected with modern science and technology, like Middle East, which is known for its own traditional values, where Sophia was given. Probably that is why they are very smart. They will still manage all Sophias if they want. But in other places, we don't know. So the Middle East always likes to have some kind of news value at times. The tallest tower, this one, that one, all that. But we really cannot think, is it only a flash news, a kind of a TikTok message, or is it going to be everywhere Sophia sitting and greeting us? That is one important part. So who would push the red button? All of you know the word red button. Don't ask me where the red button is, or is it really red in color? The point is, red button is where nuclear war with the president, with the heads of the state. And whenever you consider some country is dangerous, because will the red button, even Imran Khan may be sensible, but somebody else, what you call us, when Imran goes to restroom and comes, somebody will come there and push the red button. Is a big worry somebody may have. This vulnerability was there even with people started worried about Trump also, right? At the last stage, they thought whether Trump also is he reliable to give the red button was a big question. So is there a difference between a corporate using AI, government? Again, a big difference. As I said, nothing. I mean, I'm also trying to talk to corporate to take my students for internship. But the point is, corporate has a very specific goal, specific focus. It is a shareholder. That's it. If my shareholders are happy, I'm over. But a government, every citizen is a shareholder. So we are really looking at, we still do not have the template in front of us. Should children be allowed to use AI? Because anybody knows it's inversely proportional. Who is technically smart in your house is the youngest one. Without machines, who is smart? The eldest one. With machines, who is the smartest? The most youngest person is the smartest one. And so they also will they come into AI. Who should be responsible if harm arises from taking a decision? So Justice mentioned some more. All of you know ROS tracks changes of laws. Lux Machina, legal analytics, on data on judgments, win-loss rates, settlements, statistical analysis of arguments. They even started profiling judges, let me tell you. Right? Do you get my point? Not that human beings, I will not say human beings don't do, human beings do, right? Human beings do. But this is more precisely looking even a judge's mind. So then we are going to hope against hope to a court. And then when you are really looking statistical analysis to do, etc., what is that? Then that is where, interestingly, Justice said, will you have your friendly cyber judge in your mobile itself? And that too with a blank face where you can fill up the face you like, right? And then that judge will deliver everything in your app, in your mobile itself. Looks very exciting from a science technology point of view. Why do I run to a court somewhere? Why do I wait for such a time delay? All that. This is excellent. But who is the person who's developing the code? I call it. End of the day, remember all things, end of the day, all this is a code, CODE. And the code developer decides what is the outcome in a way. Or the code developer himself cannot control what happens is the biggest worry everybody has in science fiction, novels, everywhere. And the point, what I said earlier, when I was very young, I used to read a lot of science fiction books. For me, it is just never there. But interestingly, all have come after 40 years. Now, what you read as fiction comes next year. It is no more in my childhood days I studied, it is all happening. And that is how the worry of whether you should get excited by science and technology or you should be worried about it. Or somewhere where you have to balance. Another spot draft, Luminance, Contract Express, there are plenty developed. And all the youngsters I find are so smart, lawyers especially, they are more going to developing software rather than getting into courts, right? That is another trend happening now, I find, with young people doing things. So the central thing, as I said, code, as I told you, will you have a customized avatar of a judge agreed upon the parties and potential danger of hacking the mind of the virtual judge for a favorable judgment again, right? These are all may look very, what I call as very nice creative imagination. You don't ask me further all what will happen because I'm keeping copyright for my next movie script on that. So I will not reveal much in this conference, right? Now, for now, Honorable Justice of India said recently, I wish to point out it's not an attempt to introduce artificial intelligence in the decision-making process itself. The system we are looking at has a reading speed of about 10 lakh words per second. How much? 10 lakh words per second, which means you can read anything and ask a question to give the answer. However, there is no thought of substituting the judicial decision-making process of the human mind. So you can have a small sigh of relief. But let me tell you, Honorable Chief Justice is older to me. I may share that. I really don't know. The young lawyers who are going to become future judges, will they share the sentiment? All they'll tell, no, let's play around with AI. We really don't know that. But for now, that is okay. As I said, art has entered. The copyright should be to the pen or the writer. AI, the user, has no creativity. For example, this is a Rembrandt picture, right? Rembrandt's masterpiece, they call. Older, the auction price goes up. But this Rembrandt picture is done by IBM machine. And they are not able to really know which is a real Rembrandt, which is a IBM Rembrandt. Now, how does IBM means micropixels of micropixels? It has studied few months about Rembrandt picture. And then, of course, still in a replica. Tomorrow it does something and somebody sells it as a Rembrandt which was found in some attic. People will believe because experts who look at Rembrandt could not differentiate. So these are all some of the things. As I said, the 3D, which is 148 million pixels, it has done. And that is the kind of phenomena. In the United States, they said Copyright Office register and original authorship. So far, even in US, it is human being should be the creator. Still, they have not given IP rights to, because why I call US? Because US is a front runner in technology and also certain legal breakthroughs, what they do. Then Europe follows. then probably third world follows. US always in the front line about breaking some, what they call breaking the glass ceiling when it comes to technology and law in many ways. So Australian case also still copyright is not given. European case, they still use the word author as flesh and blood. Still, I would say at this point jurisprudence, they are imagining what machines will do. But I said whether a person would, leave alone Sophia was given citizenship, right? That is a, I would even consider that as a kind of a flash news. But you take more developed countries, which goes to the in-depth jurisprudence, still personhood, is not given to an artificial intelligence or a machine. So the approach is best encapsulated in UK copyright law, which says literary, dramatic, musical, artistic work should be taken by the person. So if artificial intelligence does something, who arranged the artificial intelligence will be still the author, not the artificial intelligence. So for time being, with bated breath, we are trying to talk about AI and personality. This is what we are doing. There are a few more, which I, for want of time. But again, the last big case which our students will be interested is the case of Naruto. David Slater, a famous, prominent, freelance photographer, wildlife. He took a camera and he left the camera accidentally, and this Indonesian monkey, which later on was named as Naruto, right? And it took the camera and clicked itself and threw the camera back. In the camera, there is a picture. And then he said, this is the first selfie done by a monkey. And Wikipedia and some other people published it. Then he filed a case. Hey, this copyright belongs to me. How can you publish? Then they said, you did not take the picture. You are not the author. The monkey is the author. If the monkey is filing a case, let's manage it. Who are you to come and file a case? Was the long battle. So the question came whether Naruto has a copyright over the picture it took. In the bargain, PETA, that People for Ethical Treatment of Animals, they jumped into the fray with their lawyers. They said, whatever may be the outcome, that money should go to upkeep of the monkeys, neither to David Slater nor to anyone. If there is a compensation, it should go to the monkeys. So they complicated or probably gave business to some more lawyers to enter the fray. So all this happened, and finally the court said, right, Article 3 of the American Constitution, they said, still, they said you can even sue for injunctive other reliefs, but lacks similar standing, because animal rights is one of the frontline thing happening in many places. We are selective about animal right of cows. There is animal rights everywhere in many things. I was surprised to see in many restaurants in Switzerland, in the fish tank, 3 sides were painted, 1 side was open. I thought if 4 sides we can see the fish. Then they say no. Swiss municipality law says fish needs privacy. So 3 sides painted, it will go and rest that side. You can only see when it comes to your side, they said. So I was little aghast, but then I thought this is how logic and jurisprudence is moving on, animal rights and fish rights. So what I said is automatic patent classification is already in WIPO is doing. I'm in touch with the people that do a tremendous work on using AI. Image search is happening. Machine translation is happening. US patent manual, they have brought in examination procedure through AI. So it's a matter of thing happening in regular thing. But as we said, the biggest part is, about how to trade trademarks. These are all questions. This is Naruto, as I said, for you. Who is Naruto? If you ask, I just thought this is what Naruto is. We don't know whereabouts of Naruto. It is somewhere in Indonesian forest. But when this is a selfie, it clicked. I think it did a good job. The way it clicked the selfie, right? It is natural intelligence, not artificial intelligence. So as I am nearing the time, I have got an appointment, and I will let you know what the appointment is. Is simple. I have to tell Alexa my session is closing. Sooner or later, I'll be joining you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for such a wonderful, wonderful address. It has been most informative, most interesting. Over to you, Gaurav. I believe Gaurav is facing some internet difficulties. So we will be moving on. Okay, so now the time has come to unveil the precious thoughts and expressions which have come up in the form of a publication. We are very proud to present the book titled Artificial Intelligence and Law, which is an edited book to be which has been published and contains the select articles that have been received for the national conference. Amidst the pandemic, we are inaugurating it virtually. We are waiting for our Vice Chairman, sir, to join us. Maybe he'll be joining in the next few minutes, and then we will be unveiling the book in the august presence of our chief guest.
Sir has joined.
Sir has joined? All right. So I would request all the dignitaries present here to please unveil the book. Thank you so much, sir. Okay.
As a matter of fact, it would have been the privilege of our honorable chief guest, Mr. Vivekanandan, but because our publisher failed to deliver these books well in time and so well in advance that it could have been dispatched to Mr. Vivekanandan, we have been deprived of the book having been launched by him. Anyway, I appreciate the efforts made by our team of this conference, who have themselves edited it from one end to another. All the articles received by our institution have been edited by them. And indeed, though I have not yet been able to go through the book, but I believe that wonderful articles might have been written by our participants. And on lighter side, I recall a moment, lighter moment, I must say. I was attending a medical association's conference when the chief guest was asked to launch the book. So when he was opening it, so he observed that though the book is being opened by me, but I can see almost all the members of audience were going through the articles therein. So it was indeed a very lighter moment observed by the chief guest. Anyway, I wish the team a good luck for their efforts, and I must compliment them. Also, I must compliment all the participants who have written their articles and who have found space in this book. So thank you very much, Mr. Vivekanandan. God bless you. Yes, over to Vedpriya.
Thank you so much, sir. To provide an idea to the audience about the book and the articles received, I now invite Professor Dr. Ravikant Swami to tell us about the book.
So, is that audible?
Yes, sir. Yes. Sir, can you hear us? We cannot hear you. I think sir has lost connection somehow. All right. So we'll wait for sir to join back. Maybe we'll have a little bit about the book later. Until then, we have with us Mr. Aman Sahni, the Vice Chairman of Delhi Metropolitan Education, NIDA, a young visionary trained at London School of Economics. He is heading the Mayur School, the DWPS NIDA Extension, the Delhi Technical Campus, and of course, Delhi Metropolitan Education, along with other organizations. His penchant for quality teaching, research, and student mentoring club with his Fabian socialism, is a navigator for TN. I invite Sir to appraise the guest about the Institute and express his views on the conference. Please, Sir. Sir, we cannot hear you, sir. You just... Not yet, sir.
I think there might be some connections with my network over here. I'm not in my office.
Sir, are we audible to you? Okay, so you're audible, but very, very softly. So maybe if you could have the volume increased. Sir is joining us back in. Just maybe a minute.
Am I audible now?
Yes, yes. Yes.
Yes? Okay, great, perfect. Sorry about that. I'm not in my office, so I think there are some network issues where I am. As I was trying to say, it has been a fascinating morning already so far. And I've personally learned quite a few things already. And while discussing about a year ago the potential topics for this conference and all upcoming events, we were discussing that we must choose topics that will help us in the future, that are not just a reflection of the past or a commentary on the present, but with eye on the future. And I think that is what we must do. And sometimes we don't do enough. We let the future just come to us. But I think if we are able to learn from the past and live in the present and do things well in the present and prepare for the future, I think that is a very good formula for success. And as academicians, it is a responsibility for everyone, for all of us, to prepare for the future in the best possible manner, to ensure that we are very aware, we are very wary of where we want to be, of how to get there, of the potential problems. And this topic is fascinating. As was mentioned by our learned chief guest, he mentioned science fiction of yesterday is the truth of today. Our fiction of today will probably be the reality of tomorrow. So it is really interesting in how we engage with these areas that are not just challenging, but also a dilemma in themselves when it comes to even wider issues of morality and and of human control and human existence, even maybe at some point in the form that it is today. So there are all these excellent areas that fascinate everybody, and to combine them with law, and which is the primary field of study at DME, one of the primary fields of study at DME, is fascinating. So I'm very excited about this conference, and I'm really looking forward to the next day as well. Hope it's as interesting as it has been so far. The book looks great. Congratulations to everybody who's published in this book. My best wishes to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your words. Ravikant sir has joined as well. So I will request our director, Professor Dr. Ravikant Swami, to please inform the audience a little bit about the book.
Okay, so whenever we talk about conference, the critical part is publication, and I'm happy to see that this conference could provide a choice of publication to the participants and the article contributors between a UGC Care journal and a book. So this book comprises of 30 articles, and the remaining have gone for publication in the UGC Care journal. Well, writing a book is like making, if not a movie, a small TV episode. Yes, the purpose of this book is very clear, that it should be a useful piece of work. And I'm very sure for students, researchers, teachers, lawyers, this book is going to be a useful piece of work. Well, we started with the marketing part, means we need to reach out to the people. People should know that a conference is being held on this topic, and then only they can contribute the articles. So the publication of this book started with the marketing part, or you can call it the publicity part, or the dissemination of information part. And yes, the output is there. This book is having contributors who are really pan-India, if not international. The next part is about selecting the publisher. Yes, we could select a publisher who is renowned in the field of law. There were so many choices, but then we selected a publisher who could add some value to this conference. And yes, Thakkar is a known name in the field of law. We also call it Weitzman Publishing. Another important part was editing, which in today's world means testing the plagiarism as well. So we had our own plagiarism parameters, and I can tell the audience that each article in this book is tested for plagiarism. Means anyone can go and check it on Turnitin, and the results will be there. And then the printer's devil, yes, it's always there. The book was supposed to be delivered 2 days before, but I can tell you it was delivered yesterday at 10:30 in the night. So as our Director General sir said, the inaugural was supposed to be videographed, but it could not happen because there are always improvisations when it comes to any big program. Next is the distribution of this book. We have to see that this book reaches to the people who need it. I wish all the readers a very happy reading. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So I invite Gaurav to continue with the conclusion of the ceremony.
Thank you, ma'am. With this, we move to the end of the ceremony. I invite Professor Dr. Bhavesh Gupta to conclude the event. Sir has 15 years of teaching experience and has successfully handled a gamut of diversified functional areas in academics. He is professor and head of academics at DME Law School, Noida. I request sir to deliver the vote of thanks and declare the conference open.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak on this auspicious occasion. And really, it's a matter of profound privilege and honor for all of us. And I am sure that everybody has enjoyed. A great jurist once said, "Gratitude is the fairest blossom which springs from the soul." So today, I, on behalf of DME and the entire fraternity of the institution, take this opportunity to put all my gratitude in the form of words. And at the outset, I place on record my deep sense of gratitude to our distinguished chief guest, Professor Dr. V.C. Vivekanandan, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Hidayatullah National Law University, Raipur, for having graciously consented to be the chief guest for today's inaugural ceremony. Thank you so much, sir, for acceding our request to commemorate this two-day national conference by your benign presence. It was indeed a heartfelt pleasure to listen to your insightful expressions and the way you have given a meticulous presentations with the help of PPTs. The topic has become so simple. And in the initial beginning, as very well said by the director, sir, that the topic was so dangerous. But I am sure after perusing these slides, the topic might have become so simple for all of us. Thank you so much, sir. We are grateful to you. And as said by Honorable DG, sir, that due to this pandemic, we are meeting virtually. And therefore, the souvenir of the conference, which was handed to me personally, would now be dispatched at your residence shortly. Thank you, sir. And you deserve a huge round of applause, sir. Thank you, thank you. Our honorable regards to Dr. Rashmi Nagpalji, Dean, Shobit University, for her keen interest in this two-day national conference. Thank you so very much, ma'am, for the love and affection that you have showered on all of us. Thank you. We are indebted to you as well. Now, moving ahead, I sincerely acknowledge the esteemed presence of our Honorable Vice Chairman, sir, Mr. Aman Sahni, Honorable Mr. Justice Bhamar Singh ji, Director General DME, former Judge Allahabad High Court, Allahabad, our Director, Professor Dr. Ravikant Swamiji, who have always been a huge pillar of support, and for bestowing upon their indispensable blessings and for giving us, I should say, a rock-solid foundation with a majestic infrastructure. Thank you so very much, sir. It's indeed always a pleasure to work under your kind guidance. Thank you, sir. Now, I'm grateful to the convener of the national conference, Ms. Vedapriya Lahiri, the co-convener, Ms. Sri Durga, and the other members, namely Mr. Gunjan Agrahari, Dr. Randhava, Ms. Gayatri Kapoor, for always giving their best in whatsoever task is assigned to them. Thank you so much, the dedicated team of the conference committee. My sincere thanks to all the participants who have gathered from different parts of the country. And just to mention the few, like from the Jammu and Kashmir, we have participants from Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka, MP, Assam, and the list goes on. In short, I can say that all the east, west, north, south directions have been substantially covered by the participants. Thank you so very much. And last but not the least, sincere thanks to the Gaurav Vardhan and his team, the dear students, and the esteemed faculty members of the DME. And with this, I conclude and I hereby declare officially the conference open for deliberations. Thank you so very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. With this, now we conclude the event. Thank you for joining us. You may stay back to record your attendance by filling the link circulated in the chat box. All the participants are requested to join their respective technical sessions via the Zoom link provided. I once again thank each one of you for joining here for this national conference. Hope you have a delightful experience.
Thank you. I take leave of Honorable Justice, and then your Dean, and then Ms. Lahiri, Professor Bhavish, and Professor Rashmi, and everyone there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
I request the Zoom management team to stop the live streaming on Facebook. Thank you.